Diplomacy often happens in the spotlight, but true power shifts begin in the shadows. On September 2, 2025, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi reportedly met in secret with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping in Shanghai. This was no routine summit sideline, it was a clandestine trilateral meeting, denied until satellite images and leaks forced the truth out. The implications are seismic. India, long seen as a democratic counterweight to China and a key U.S. partner, is now signaling a radical foreign policy shift. Shanghai, China's economic heart, was a symbolic choice, far from the usual Western diplomatic circuits. The secrecy suggests the agenda went far beyond trade, likely touching on security, defense, and the future of Asian power. For Modi, this is his boldest move yet, pivoting India away from the US and toward its authoritarian neighbors. The world is only beginning to feel the shockwaves. Reports describe a meticulously planned 6-hour meeting, no photo ops, just hard negotiations. What was agreed behind those closed doors? The answers could redefine Asia's balance of power for decades. September 2025 may be remembered as the day the Indo-Pacific order began to unravel. A new, more volatile era is dawning. Details remain secret, but leaks reveal the Shanghai summit was about more than economics. The core, a new trilateral security framework, challenging US-led alliances in Asia. The goal? Reduce and eventually exclude external military influence, namely, the United States. Russia and China proposed exclusive naval access to Indian ports, with reciprocal access for India in the Arctic and South China Sea. This would upend India's existing pacts with the US, and redraw the map of naval power in Eurasia. Intelligence sharing was also on the table, a trilateral hub in Tashkent, to coordinate on threats, including regime stability and color revolutions. The language signals a shift from shared democratic values to shared interests in regime security, the blueprint an Asian order managed by Asians, sidelining the US, not a formal alliance, but a deep alignment that would force Washington to consult this new bloc before acting in the region. The proposals aim to systematically dismantle the US-India partnership and replace it with something fundamentally new. The Shanghai summit is the result of years of growing friction between India and the US. Trade wars, tariffs, and sanctions eroded trust, with India feeling punished rather than rewarded for aligning with US interests. The US ended India's duty-free trade privileges and threatened sanctions over India's defense ties with Russia. India saw these moves as disrespectful and an infringement on its autonomy. American pressure to choose sides clashed with India's desire for strategic independence. The final straw perceived lack of US support during India's border crises with China. Many in New Delhi felt used as a pawn in America's rivalry with Beijing. The partnership began to look one-sided, pushing India to seek more reliable, less demanding partners. The stage was set for a dramatic realignment. Sensing India's frustration, Russia and China moved quickly. Russia offered India co-development of advanced military tech, hypersonic missiles, and a second nuclear submarine. True partnership, not just sales. China, India's historic rival, proposed a border settlement and massive infrastructure investments, including high-speed rail and industrial corridors. Both offered technology and energy deals, Russia with nuclear reactors and space cooperation, China with joint 5G/6G development. Crucially, these offers came with no lectures on human rights or threats of sanctions, just pragmatic, non-interfering partnership. The message: partnership among equals, not junior status. For India, tired of Western prescriptions, this was a powerful lure. The Eastern promise was clear: respect, autonomy, and tangible benefits. Moscow and Beijing presented a vision of great civilizations cooperating on their own terms. India was ready to listen. The most dramatic fallout? The rapid dismantling of US-India military ties. India is expected to revoke US military access to its bases, rendering key agreements like LAMOA obsolete. US naval operations in the Indian Ocean would be severely hampered, forcing longer, costlier deployments. Major joint exercises, Malabar, Yudh Abhyas, COPE India, would be cancelled, erasing decades of military cooperation. Intelligence sharing arrangements would end, replaced by the new trilateral hub with Russia and China. The strategic landscape of Asia would be fundamentally reordered, with the West shut out. Foundational agreements would become meaningless, and the Pentagon strategy would be in tatters. The message: India is no longer a pillar of the US-led order. A new independent course has begun. News of the Shanghai summit stunned Washington. Disbelief turned to panic as officials realized their Asia strategy was collapsing. The US had assumed India's alignment was unshakable. Now, that illusion was shattered. Intelligence failures and diplomatic missteps were exposed. The president demanded answers. Calls to Modi went unanswered for hours, signaling a new power dynamic. US diplomats scrambled to reassure allies, but behind the scenes, a frantic damage control mission began. The US misread India's resentment over trade disputes and constant pressure on its foreign policy. Now Washington faces a crisis. What, if anything, can win India back? Incentives are being considered, trade deals, advanced tech, public affirmations, but threats of sanctions also loom. Yet America's leverage is weak. Any heavy-handed move could push India further away. The cornerstone of US-Asia policy is crumbling. The scramble for solutions has just begun. In India, the Shanghai summit sparked nationalist pride and fierce debate. Many hail Modi's move as a bold assertion of strategic autonomy and a rejection of US bullying. Supporters see this as India finally speaking the language of power. The media amplifies the pivot as a necessary correction after years of unreciprocated US friendship. Opposition parties tread carefully, demanding transparency but wary of appearing unpatriotic. Social media erupts with hashtags like #IndiaFirst and #NoMoreUsLectures. Years of frustration over visas tariffs and perceived American arrogance fuel public support for the pivot. Yet a quieter group of strategists and business leaders worry about the risks of alienating the US and trusting China. For now, nationalist fervor drowns out dissent, giving the government cover to pursue its new direction. But if the new partnerships falter, this internal fault line could re-emerge. India's pivot is more than a policy change, it's a tectonic shift in global power. The US Indo-Pacific strategy collapses without India, the Quad loses its heft. US influence in the Indian Ocean, a vital trade artery, is severely diminished. A new continental bloc, Russia, China and India emerges, controlling vast resources and populations. This bloc could challenge the Western-led order, set new financial and technological standards and reshape global institutions. The world moves toward a new bipolar reality, a Western maritime bloc versus a Eurasian continental bloc. For Asia's smaller nations, the balance tilts decisively toward Beijing, forcing them to adapt to Chinese dominance. The vision of a free and open region fades, replaced by a hierarchical order. Instability and uncertainty loom as countries scramble to adjust. The Shanghai summit may mark the true beginning of the 21st century, a new era of contest and division. The post-Cold War order is ending, a more dangerous world is emerging. The decisions made now in New Delhi, Beijing and Moscow will shape the future. The world watches, holding its breath.